BobaTalks here. DC or DCU, we need to talk. We need to talk about this, all of us. So today's video is us doing precisely that. We are diving into everything that has gone down the past couple of weeks. If you guys have seen over on my community tab, I put a post out saying, lend me your thoughts, your ideas, your questions, your theories, just your opinion on everything that is happening in the DC universe regarding DCU's Batman, DCU's new Superman, the arcs that they could go on, the Chapter 1 slate that we're going to get in January. There's a lot that we're going to talk about in today's video that quite frankly needs talking about. So I've got a shite ton of your questions here. Yes, I'm wearing a Santa hat. I mean, it's Christmas time, and also I have no idea what day this video is going up. This is one of my Christmas videos, and you know, I hope that you enjoy it. And I do want to stress, with the rate of DC news that is coming out right now, I might not be up to date with one or two new things if something major drops over the Christmas period, but for the gist of everything that's going on, everything we're still talking about in this video is very, very relevant to more or less the latest DC news. So if you're watching this around some point of Christmas, I hope you're having a lovely Christmas or whatever you celebrate. I hope you're having a great time, some time off, some presents or whatever you're doing, and I hope this video is something you can kick back and relax to, and just, yeah, hopefully it sparks that fire in your brain of what could be coming our way in the DC future. So let's start with question number 1. This comes from Jackson Durr. He's a great artist. Check out his Instagram. He's got some insane artwork. And he says, James Gunn is dead set on making a cohesive universe, and I'm all for that. But it seems he's also letting the Batman and Joker universe have their stay. My question is, after Todd and Matt walk away from those stories, do you think James Gunn would allow Elseworld-like stories to pop up again? Or is this a one-time exception due to their critical and audience popularity? Now, that's a good question. And as of the latest information we've got with regards to James Gunn, as we know, he's very transparent on Twitter. He likes replying to a lot of things, and it often gives us clarity, but also often makes the waters more murkier. He did say in a very similar question to what you're posing here, with a fan saying like, is there going to be more Elseworld stories or projects outside of the DCU? And he replied, this is actively happening. Now, you can interpret that in one or two ways with how it is literally happening, as you're pointing out here, the Batman trilogy, Joker 2, that could be the last film. We've got Ta-Nehisi Coates and J.J. Abrams' Black Superman movie, which is apparently going forward. But the main question is, yes, it's actively happening, but will they still actively happen in the future? I would like to think that they will, because even though it's been stated with this new DC universe, or should I say DC Studios, there's going to be more or less this connected universe across not only movies, but I guess HBO Max TV shows, as is explained, TV shows, games, and animation. But it has been specifically answered by James Gunn that we are going to be getting other stories in the animated side of things, other video games, because again, if you only had them connected to the DC Universe canon, then we'd never have games like the Arkham games, for instance. So if that's the case for those two mediums of animation and games, you would have to think that Elseworld stories in terms of movies are still on the board. But I do think that the priority, other than the Batman trilogy cooking in the background, I think will be to make sure that they're getting their mainline DC universe in order. I just wouldn't rule it out. I think that's all I can say for now, because it's a bit of a weird situation. We've got active, Elseworlds projects happening right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean, okay, we're going to get a whole new active Elseworlds project in the future. Let's just say a Deathstroke Elseworlds story, or a Lex Luthor Elseworlds story that a lot of people were thinking Todd Phillips might do after we got that Joker Elseworlds story. Now, those are just vague examples. It could be something completely different, like Batman Beyond, Kingdom Come. I really don't know. Insert idea here. Will we still get those in movies? I would like to think that we will. I really do. I think DC does see the merit in the profit of these movies. So I know they are getting their main house in order with the connected universe, the new DC universe with the new Superman. But I would bank on, maybe not in the short term, but in the next 3 to 5+ years, I know that is quite a large scope of time, that there might be another announcement for, hey, you liked Batman, the Batman trilogy, you liked Joker, hey, we're actually looking into doing this as well. Up next is from Victoria Genevieve Elizabeth saying, since it's been confirmed by Gunn that he wants to focus on both well-known and not so well-known characters, do you think he'll finally give Nightwing and Red Hood the big screen love that they need and deserve, since they have been loved for decades and everybody's been wanting them to be properly introduced for years? By the way, I'm sure James is a smart guy, and I know that he's been seeing all the tweets towards him about Dick and Jason. I have no doubt with the latter of what you said that he reads these things and it must start some internal thought process of, maybe, yeah, I don't know. None of us can truly know, but it's safe to say that he's probably thought about it. He's the guy now who's forging this 8 to 10 year plan of chapters, aka phases, and story arcs. And okay, it's likely starting with Superman here, but what's the next movie after that? Which character will that introduce? And here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. Chapter 2, here, and here, and here, and so on and so forth. Now, Nightwing and Red Hood, I think, and we're going to get into Batman a little bit more in a minute, and how this can bleed out into other characters, that it is, to me, and obviously before anyone comments it, oh, this is just total speculation, this is the point of this video. This is all speculation if I haven't made that clear enough. And I do like to try and use things that have been said by James Gunn to fuel my speculation, just to let you know. And I do feel like, since DCU Batman has a big role, that given that Superman isn't an origin story, yet it's his younger years, I truly do believe that Batman won't be an origin story in this universe. I think they're going to want to hit the ground running with this universe, and albeit you have a younger Superman, it's not that origin, as we've already clarified, but it's also going to hit the ground running with that character, hopefully, and the same should apply to Batman. And I think Gunn will obviously differentiate himself from the kind of noir detective version of Batman that Reeves is heavily focusing on. No, I'm not saying that this new Batman in the DCU, who's meant to have this big role, won't be remotely detective based. You know, it's still Batman, but what I'm saying is it'll probably be differentiated through hitting the ground running and how he's probably already past Batman Year 3. Sometimes Dick Grayson arrives during Batman Year 3, so Bruce is around 29-ish at that age. So if Bruce is in his mid-30s to late 30s, which isn't an old Batman at all, and that's where we're already having this DCU Bruce already pick up in this new universe, then that really does tell me that Nightwing, or at least Dick Grayson to Nightwing, could be a real possibility. Then you have the reports of James Gunn possibly teasing a Deathstroke in the DCU, because a fan asked him, saying, is there a future for Deathstroke in your universe? And he said, could be, ... It really does flesh out those ideas in my mind of, okay, well, if, Deathstroke is a very Titans lore character, we have DCU Batman playing a big role, DCU Batman is highly unlikely to be an origin story, then it makes me think, could we get a Titans team? Now, as for Red Hood, that's something I'm leaving blank for now. I don't think they're going to do a whole Red Hood arc or anything like that. Maybe Red Hood could already be out there. Maybe he's already trained Dick, he's Nightwing, maybe Jason's already died. It really does depend how late Batman is into his game. So I'm a lot less, inclined to say that, oh yeah, Red Hood this, Red Hood that. But the Nightwing and the kind of status of Batman in Year 3 to Year 6-ish or beyond is something I'm really thinking about right now. All right, so up next isn't so much a question, it's more just Tanner Love's perspective, I suppose, and I just wanted to read it out. So, as much as it sucks to see all these fairs kind of being pushed out of their roles, I think Gunn is the real deal and is serious about getting all of these characters, both popular and lesser known characters, on the big screen. That's something I am quite excited about, other possible characters, and we'll get into that as well. I think he'll give us the main trinity, a young version of each of them, and then over the years show them grow. Exactly, this is an 8 to 10 year plan. Granted, Gunn's contract is for 4 years, but I do truly believe, I know people are salty and I completely understand, and I myself am sad about Henry Cavill not being the Superman, but I do think the idea behind it is if you're going for an 8 to 10 year plan, maybe you kind of wanted to start with Superman not in his origin, but like kind of young, so you can see that Tony Stark to 10 years later Tony Stark. Again, excuse the Marvel comparison, it's just the easiest way for me to put it. Journey from Clark at the beginning of the DCU, with the first movie likely being the new Superman, to 10 years later, which is likely the idea behind it. I think we'll finally see Batman have the 3 main Robins, maybe even more. Not so sure about the 3 main Robins, but I do think he will be fleshed out to potentially that part of his career, at the very least, as we just went over in the previous question. I think we'll see Superman and his relationship with Lois grow, and see him have children later. That's a total possibility with the timeline. of the plan. That is, I think we'll see 2 different Earth Green Lanterns, if not more. I 100% agree that, you know, MCU-wise, we're gonna have like the Earthbound heroes, we're gonna have the space stuff going on, you know, Lanterns, like Marvel has their space stuff going on. Maybe we'll see all of the sidekicks and their growth as they form the Teen Titans and later become the future of DC films. Maybe Dick Grayson, 10 years after these films get kicked off, finally becomes Batman, and Wally will become the Flash. I think now more than ever, things like this will be a major possibility for DC. As bummed as I am, I'm excited for what's to come. Now, obviously, it's impossible to know about truly the 10 years later thing, like, you know, Dick becoming the new Batman, Wally becoming the new Flash. I don't know about any of that. I don't really want to entertain that so much other than talking about 10 years later with regards to, oh, Superman at the beginning, seeing him grow to 10 years later. That's something that's obvious to talk about. Whereas, you know, specifically saying things is getting into territory that, even though all of this video is speculation, I'm really, really unsure about that part of time. But one thing you did mention is Titans. I do think that could be a possibility. We did have James Gunn recently say that the new DC universe has been, you know, a bit inspired by the Justice League Unlimited show and Young Justice, which is something to take note of, especially when you take into account everything we've been discussing in this video so far, with how if Superman's not an origin story, I don't think Batman will as well. So what does that make you think? If Batman's already a few years into his career, which I'm willing actually to kind of bet that he will be, then maybe, just maybe, this universe will be at a point where a Titans team could be possible. If not like a fully fledged, hey, the Titans, maybe some things like that, or characters coming together to do something like that, especially if maybe we're getting Deathstroke at some point in that 8 to 10 year plan. Also as well, call me optimistic, but I agree. As bummed as I am as well, like for self-explanatory reasons, like Superman and whatnot, I am also quite intrigued and excited for what is to come. Only if, like, this is the thing, only if it's executed very damn well. And I think the new DC universe, to justify what fans have felt has now been lost with, for example, Cavill, these new movies need to hit the bullseye on the head, like pretty damn well. So Lennox W says, what villains would you use in a new Superman film? Is it too soon for a Lobo cameo? And also, do you think Gunn will introduce his own Batman, or will he wait until Reeves completes his trilogy and then integrate the Batman if Pattinson is willing? And I wanted to attach this next comment because there still seems to be people asking this, even though it has been, you know, shot down. So Parker says, do you think it's a possibility that the Batman will be the foundation for this 8 to 10 year plan, or do you think it will be a completely fresh start? And if so, will the Batman's universe still continue in its own little section of the multiverse? So I don't know how many people are aware, even though it is public news. We had a story from Variety, a major trade, quite literally saying and reporting, which got the whole internet in this side of the fandom erupting. And the report went something along the lines of, James Gunn and Peter Safran are exploring the possibilities of incorporating Matt Reeves as the Batman / Robert Pattinson into their larger DC universe that's coming our way. James Gunn quote tweeted that, so if you're not on Twitter, that means you literally like take that tweet of the major trades tweet linking to their article saying, I love this reporter, he's a good guy, but this is entirely untrue. Matt Reeves then quote tweeted James Gunn quote tweeting the major trades article saying, the source I really like on this is Mr. James Gunn. So I know some people are still thinking after that, but what if? To me, reading that, it is fairly definitive. I don't get why James Gunn would put that out there, quote tweeting the article saying no. Like, entirely untrue. Then Matt Reeves, his way of acknowledging that is to quote tweet James Gunn without giving so much dialogue to the conversation. His way of saying, no, this isn't happening. This isn't what I've really even wanted in the first place. I've said that before, but the source I like on this is Mr. James Gunn, who is shutting it down. So that's the source I like. This should tell you guys something. So with that being said, no, I don't think. I'm pretty damn sure that the Batman will not be the foundation of this new DC universe. I think that's going to be James Gunn's written Superman movie, which is likely to be that first literal movie of this chapter 1 of their coming DC universe. So hopefully that puts that to rest for now. Again, I know there's always going to be certain fans who have certain theories that, even with that said, in several years' time, they might go back on it and integrate Pattinson's Batman into this larger DC universe. I personally don't believe that. But anyway, back to Lennox's original question. What villains would you use in the new Superman film? Is it too soon for a Lobo cameo? I can't shut down the second thing because some people are, speculating that could Lobo be the kind of more, not earthbound threat, because he is a potentially in some iterations insanely strong, powerful character that can kind of go up against Superman, albeit kind of without destroying him. It's kind of like they both clash in that interesting way. And with all the rumors surrounding Lobo, you could argue, without doing Zod again and without Brainiac for the first movie or anything like that, hey, how about like Superman in his younger years having to deal with this? Who's this Lobo guy? Damn, like this is going to be a challenge. So you can't shut that down. But I do wonder, and I don't know how happy this is going to make people. Again, I don't know this for a fact. But Superman Returns. Whether you love it or absolutely hate it or just find it completely you see some things in it where you think, okay, but mostly no, or whatever side of the coin you land on. I do wonder if this first Superman movie, and potentially first movie of the DC universe, kicking off that chapter 1, will be kind of like that. Now, one of the complaints, I believe, of Superman Returns is Brandon Routh's Superman. He comes down to Earth, he saves that plane. That was pretty cool. But for the most part of the movie, there's obviously no Darkseid level threat. There's no Brainiac level threat. There's no Zod level threat. It's Superman kind of saving people, being, Superman in many interesting ways. Lex Luthor, organizing his plan. And it kind of tried to mediate an interesting movie and drama through that unfolding. I always, when I was younger, was obsessed with this movie. I found it very powerful that Superman, at least at the time, and I still have a bit of bias for this scene, when he's with Lex Luthor and he gets like stabbed and this is like brutal. It really is brutal till this day when Superman's just getting kicked and kicked. Brandon Routh's like acting his heart out in that moment. Superman is completely powerless in front of Lex Luthor and his goons in that scene. But what I'm trying to articulate is that it wasn't an otherworldly threat, and the movie focused on kind of the Superman that we saw even in the older previous movies. And I'm wondering if James Gunn is going to do a similar thing. Maybe you could argue it could still be destructive, kind of combat like Lobo or some kind of other villain. But I do wonder if this first movie is going to have a younger Superman. It's not an origin, so that means he's already wearing the cape. He isn't or hasn't necessarily gone up against crazy universal threats, but he's out there doing his job. So with that being said, how much combat would we see? Because I know some people are saying that combat similar to what we saw from Zack Snyder with Henry Cavill Superman. Again, I'm not saying destroy Metropolis, but that kind of really wild action, the super fast combat, using their Kryptonian speed, the punches with Zod and his henchmen and stuff. Some people are saying that cannot be given up. And I'm just wondering what if it kind of is. Now, I'm not saying this movie won't have any of that, but what if it does mainly take the approach from something like Superman Returns, the old Donner movies, to not make it completely actionless? Maybe they'll put some, really cool scenes in there, but maybe it just won't be like slam, punch, slam, heat vision, slam, slam, slam all the time. Now, if that does happen, I just do want to say this. That isn't the worst thing in the world if they make like a really good Superman movie. And the reason why I say that is because don't forget, this is movie number 1, potentially. This Superman, whoever's cast for this Superman, at the current point in time, is meant to be the Superman for the next 8 to 10 years of this, larger, connected, cohesive storyline unfolding universe, which undoubtedly would mean, as we see that Superman carry on in his journey throughout the 8 to 10 years of the DC universe, he will have crazy-ass fights. I'm just focusing on the first movie. Will they approach it more in the ways I've been saying? Now, I'm in a bit of a funny situation about that. I don't think you should have an outright Superman Returns movie, or like the old Donner movies where there isn't any kind of Man of Steel level of awesome action and combat. But I wouldn't mind if you try and thematically bring out Superman in every way you can. Obviously, you don't have to go down the tropey, oh, I've saved a plane, as cool as I actually still find that scene in Superman Returns. But what I'm trying to say is, still focusing on all the other things those movies achieved without doing world-destructive action, but to kind of make it a happy medium, still put some action in there, like where Superman is actually kind of, really up to his tether because he's slightly inexperienced. Again, not an origin, but slightly still up to it here, doing whatever he's dealing with at several points in the movie, where there's still a lot of, action craving that is satisfied, should I say. So I know that was like a long-winded, drawn-out answer to what villains would I use in the Superman film, but your question kind of led me to that. So I don't know what villains would be used to warrant such a film, but I do argue that Superman stories can still be told in the kind of older stories before Zack Snyder's kind of more punchy action movies, which again, I'm not saying that's all they are. In fact, I love that. I'm just saying it wouldn't be a bad thing if whatever villain there is, or whatever Superman has to deal with whilst he's in his early years, still, very much so a reporter in Metropolis. He's still got the cape on, but he hasn't been doing it for a massive amount of time. What villain would that be? And I do think that wouldn't necessarily entail Man of Steel or Batman vs. Superman or Justice League action, but it could still provide a kick-ass Superman movie. And the most important thing is to do Superman well and a good story. Of course, though, we need a little bit of action. And up next, here we have a couple of more comments kind of expanding upon what I said earlier. So Rakeem B says, I reckon the DCU Batman will differentiate from the Reeves Batman by focusing more on the Robins and the Bat family and using that avenue to be different. Although I do think Reeves will introduce Robin at some point, I think DCU Batman will be introduced with Dick Grayson already at his side, and Dick's development will be a key focus on these films, and I think he'll helm a Teen Titans film. His development into Nightwing would be a years-long arc. Chris L says, as a huge Bat family fan, I've been waiting so long for a good cinematic appearance of Dick Grayson. Starting this continuity over yet again makes this seem highly unlikely, knowing we will be getting a younger Batman/Superman. See, that's something I kind of disagree with. Yes, we're getting a younger Superman, but not an origin story. I do think Batman will be obviously younger than Ben Affleck, but don't forget that Robin can come in, and quite often does, at Batman Year 3, which makes him around 28 to 30 years old, quite often 29 years old. So let's just say this Bruce Wayne's 34 to 37. That is very easy to have a Dick Grayson in his teenage years to late teens, or, whatever they want to play around with there. So do you think this could be at all likely in the 8 to 10 year plan under James Gunn? Has he ever expressed interest in Robins or Nightwing? I do think it could be likely. And has he ever expressed interest? I can't really remember, outside of his recent comments saying that the new DCU inspiration could have a Deathstroke in it. That's something intriguing. Despite how many people thinking he's a Batman villain, he's actually crucially and specifically a Teen Titans villain. And with James Gunn being very, and I mean it, like very knowledgeable and a fan of the DC comics, I think he would stick to that side rather than making Deathstroke still Slade Wilson and very accurate, but a Batman villain. I think it would be true to the roots of what Deathstroke's involvement is with the Titans, but also he did mention the Young Justice inspiration, so it does make you think. Jan Merson says, P.S. I would love to see a Green Arrow movie finally. Me too. Now, I always get asked about other characters, and especially as James Gunn said, they're going to be, doing big characters while simultaneously fleshing out other characters. Not saying Green Arrow isn't a big character, but clearly he hasn't, outside of the CW, had a big movie presence. So it does give me big hope for Green Arrow. James Gunn is a big fan of Green Arrow, and I really think this could be the time, especially when you consider, even though it's been said that the DCU Bruce will have a big role, with what we've already been talking about with Bruce Wayne having that big role and, possibly already being in his mid-30s or so, having his career already perhaps built up to an extent of where there has already been a Robin, and with the Batman Reeves trilogy still going on at the same time, maybe Bruce appears in these other projects before helming his solo movie. So that doesn't negate that he won't have a really important role. It's just those important roles might appear in other projects first. But the reason why I'm saying all of that is because maybe the vigilante they might focus on in terms of solo movies first could be someone like the Green Arrow. Not that they won't simultaneously focus on Bruce Wayne, as I just said, maybe in larger other projects as the world is constructing and fleshing out. All of his appearances will be relevant and crucial in these possible early DCU movies. But if you want to go head over heels on a vigilante who deserves a freaking movie, that is Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow. And I would be dying to see that. I would be, honestly, the day that gets announced, if it gets announced, I'm going to be on that just as much as I feel like the Batman movies. I really want to see that happen. So Arash asks, I was wondering what your main Justice League lineup for this universe would be. Loving the videos, by the way. Thank you. Funnily enough, this might be a bit of a boring answer, but no matter what with this new DC universe, I think the Justice League lineup will be the same. So with David Zaslav saying they want to go ham on the Trinity, obviously that makes sense. Warner Brothers Discovery wants to make money. Who are the most popular DC characters? Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. So I do think when eventually we get to these larger major DC characters, and no, I don't think the Justice League is going to be established from movie 1, Superman in his younger years. Again, not that origin story, and maybe he's even heard of, like, there's a Wonder Woman out there, or who's this Bat of Gotham? But I don't think necessarily, especially when you consider that first movie, Superman, written by James Gunn, will be at the very infancy of the universe, and this universe spans over 8 to 10 years. I think they're going to try and approach it as organic as can be, and not just start with a Justice League. They're going to curate that story to where those characters connect together. So as a result of that, I do think Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, and other characters in the typical Justice League will be that same Justice League. Now that makes you think of the Flash, Cyborg. I'm more unsure about those characters, albeit there is another question in this video from the Ginger_Law saying, do you think they will continue Ezra Miller's Flash or go a different direction? I do think if we get another Flash, which you have to think James Gunn and that new DC universe will still do, Barry Allen, the goddamn Flash, an amazing and incredible character. No, I don't think it will be Ezra. I think that ship has sailed, especially if they're doing things, even if you want to say it's a soft reboot, and that means carrying some characters on, they are recasting Henry Cavill. How can you recast Henry Cavill and not recast Ezra Miller after all of the bad press? No matter which way you lean with Ezra Miller and the drama, from a business perspective, no matter what, as I said, side you lean on with not as bad as it's being made out to be, or no, this is some shady stuff, the business level, in my opinion, dictates that, well, if you've creatively, for creative reasons, recast Henry Cavill because you want a younger Superman, you'd have to think the Flash is going to be recast. But anyway, going back to the original question, yeah, I think it's going to be Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, the Flash. Maybe we'll get some other wider DC characters. Again, going back to Green Arrow, that would be really cool if we get like a Green Arrow solo movie, all of these things. But yeah, to not like ramble about this one for much longer, believe it or not, I think the Justice League will be the most typical lineup you would expect, but that may seem like, oh really, like no changes? There might be additional changes like Martian Manhunter, which we only barely got teased towards the end of the Snyder Cut, brought in sooner. Maybe a Green Lantern. Again, like this new DC universe at its infancy will be fleshing out all of these other projects to maybe year 5, year 6 of that DC universe finally having the kind of Justice League as a formidable, actual established team. That's not to say that even before the Justice League gets officially formed in this new DC universe that you won't have brave and bold type moments, maybe Batman teaming up with Wonder Woman or someone else. I'm not saying there'll be solo movies, but who knows how that will unfold. But yeah, stuff like that. So Mondi asks me something which is, being asked quite a bit, so I thought I'd answer it now. Are you going to do a fan cast list for certain characters? For example, Superman, Lex Luthor, Flash. Love the content anyway, Boba. Thank you. So for now, what I'll say first is, yes, obviously I will at some point, but right now with all of this news so fresh and even bigger news and clarification yet to come, and especially with only the recent news that Henry Cavill is no longer Superman, for me to just think who the next Superman's going to be, I feel like I can't right now. And I guess that extends onto this overall mood I have with, okay, who's this character going to be? Who's that character going to be? Who's Batman going to be in addition to the new Superman? Right now, I'm not going to focus on which actors I can see in the role right away. I'm not saying like out of pure mourning period, but like genuinely, I think I'm going to wait for whatever, as James Gunn has said, we're going to hear about a few of the plans that he has for the DC Universe, so maybe 3 projects, 4 projects in that first chapter in January, in the new year, and maybe sometime after that or around that time, we'll start making videos like this. So look forward to that. I will be really thinking about it. I will be looking into it because usually I'm very indecisive on fan casts. Not right now, I'm not going to answer it right now, but at some point soon. Up next from Zach Briggs asking tonally, how do you think the reimagined DCU will be different from the previous iteration? That is the question, right? Like genuinely, I feel so puzzled answering this one. And, one thing I will say, yes, I guess you can say that the MCU has tonally different movies, or like in moments in the plot of each movie, there might be darker moments. For example, Spider-Man No Way Home picked up very comedic, then it got very dark after Aunt May, then it had comedic moments again. But I would still say, tonally, in the MCU, overall, it's more of a spectrum. The color slowly fades into a different color, but when you start going across that color palette or the spectrum, it's still in like the same pool of tone overall, like washing over it, I feel. And I do feel that will be a similar way with the new DC Universe movies. And I say that because when you're making a business decision to make a DC Universe, right, you want all kinds of audiences to see it. I'm not saying every single project is going to be identical, even tonally, but I do feel like there's going to be that color spectrum. So when you're going over from red in your color wheel and like you're getting more into a different color, it's still maintaining that shade, but only slowly as you drag your cursor across, it's starting to branch other territories. So that's my analogy for like how obviously when the plot warrants it, you're going to have darker moments, but it still makes me feel like the DC Universe in a cinematic way to construct it out will have an overall tone to it. And even tonally speaking, it's very hard for me to guess because James Gunn, even though we've had established projects from him in the DCEU before, like the Suicide Squad, which was R-rated, which leads the question to, are we going to get R-rated movies as well? Or, for example, Peacemaker, he's very quirky, very funny. The tonal aspects of that, I think, can be maintained, but I don't want that maintained across every character. I don't want the Green Arrow, and I'm not saying he will or James Gunn would do this, or should you even apply the logic of, you know, Peacemaker is Peacemaker, John Cena cracking all these, you know, stupid jokes, which are admittedly quite funny sometimes. So Green Arrow is going to be like that every second of the way. I don't want that, like, even though Green Arrow is a very quippy character. And then the same applied to Batman and this character and that character. No, I don't think that's going to happen. You can't put that on James Gunn because he's got like a new responsibility now. He's going to give directors their own vision. Granted that he will be the Feige kind of curating each project, saying this is kind of where it needs to go, this is our 8 to 10 year plan, but hey, you're the director, you're writing it, you know, he's not going to write every movie, even though he's writing the Superman movie. So you can't, because I've seen these comments out there saying, oh, everyone's going to be like a quirky little Peacemaker project. However, I do think there's going to be like a maintained vibe to this universe, just like there's a maintained MCU vibe. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be the same as the MCU, I'm just saying whatever vibe they go with is going to be probably established throughout. Obviously, still depending on the film, you might get some darker films than other films, but I hope you get my meaning. But comparing it to the previous iteration, it's very hard for me to articulate it. I definitely think it will have a new vibe or tone, if you will. Otherwise, it will feel exactly the same as the DCEU, and in of itself being like, okay, we've got now a new Superman, and that might likely be the first movie. I think it will just be different, but it's very hard for me to say because, you know, it's not like Justice League or, you know, Man of Steel were like heavy R-rated movies or anything like that. So with that being said, they were still family friendly to an extent, and I think most of these new movies will be. So in that category, you could say they might feel similar, but I do feel like there would be a new sheen or a new creative or like camera lens put on everything where it will just inherently feel like, okay, no, this is a new universe. I don't know, that might have been like a really crappy answer. Obviously, without even knowing the plans, I don't know how specifically tonally it will be different, but I hope that gave you an insight into like this intuition I have of how things could go generically. But that being said, I do want to stress that directors will have their own visions for movies and even tones. I'm just saying there'll still be this like echoed out, like, you know, if you watch a Marvel movie, even with like the biggest tone difference, you'll be like, yeah, but that's still in the MCU. Like you kind of know it, right? And James Gunn has said when he joined DC Studios, but you could look at this as PR talk, but given that he had so much creative freedom with his DC projects, I would like to think that this will be something he stands by, but when Gunn and Safran came in, they said, we're honored to be the stewards of these DC characters we've loved since we were children. We look forward to collaborating with the most talented writers, directors, and actors in the world to create an integrated, multi-layered universe that still allows for the individual expression of the artists involved. So that being said, I think, again, in the new DC universe, each movie that's handed off to another director, granted, just like how Feige does for the MCU, it's just like, well, this is the slate I'm approving, this is what I want to go forward, but it gets handed to a new director. I would like to think that the new DCU will, under James Gunn and Peter Safran, in a similar role they'll play, they'll hand it off to a director, they'll make sure that, like, you need to kind of go here and here and here overall, because this is our DCU plan, but they'll have a lot of creative freedom there, as per what he said in that joining DC Studios' statement. Now, guys, there is a ton more very interesting questions, some that I'm actually genuinely annoyed I didn't get to in today's video because they're just questions that I do feel like, or comments that I feel need talking about. So I do think I'll be doing another one of these, maybe towards the very end of this year, or maybe early January. So if you have any expanded thoughts on what we've already talked about today, maybe leave some extra comments so maybe I could feature your expanded comment or question or whatever you have in the next video as well. I think we could actually make a discussion series out of this in of itself, given that it's such an interesting time at DC with so much more yet to learn and so many new and pivotal and monumentally huge changes coming our way. It's going to be something that we could genuinely talk about forever at the minute. So if you enjoyed this video, let me know. I think that's really important. Let me know if you want to see this series continue. We can always put one of these out. They're fairly easy for me to make. I'm just sat here talking about it with you guys as a community. We're all just like meshing out these ideas and, you know, discussing it amongst ourselves, you know, seeing what different waves we're on and where we think things can go. So I am dying to see your comments down in that comment section. Let me know everything you thought about with what we discussed in today's video. Like this video if you did enjoy it, would really appreciate that. Maybe consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Again, depending on when this is going up, I hope you have or have had a good Christmas, and I'll see you in some videos very, very soon. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of the new DCU in the next video. Goodbye.